After School Special Podcast. After School Special Podcast. After School Special Podcast. After School Special Podcast.
Thank you for coming to your favorite little hobble, your little place among the stars, the school that treats you like no fool. We are After School Special Podcast. Welcome back, latchkey kids and broken homies. This long vacation has let my heart grow fonder and made me realize how much I love and appreciate every single one of you. As we jump back and put our nostalgia caps back on, we are going to discuss a company that was like no other, that involved physical fitness, tubes, and balls. I am not talking about prostitution or sex work, and remind you, sex work is work. I'm talking about Discovery Zone. Don, hit it.
Running swing here? I don't think so. Climb and slide here? I don't think so. Then where? I'm going easy at Discovery Zone.
You remember that song, right? But Discovery Zone, the entertainment chain popular in the 80s and 90s. Other than the name, that company filed for bankruptcy and sold many locations to Chuck E. Cheese.
Early 90s franchise that was meant to take on giants like Chuck E. Cheese. A massive entertainment space filled with mazes, ball pits, slides, all packaged inside one facility called Discovery Zone. And while that name may dig up some nostalgia for some, the chain barely made it past a decade despite its early success.
I don't think so. I'm going easy where kids wanna be.
If you were a kid in the 90s, there is a pretty good chance you remember Discovery Zone or some of the other tube and ball pit places like Leaps and Bounds and some other ones that were kind of makeshift and you weren't exactly sure if they were put together properly. A lot of razor blades sticking out of slides and a lot of nuts and bolts kind of hanging loose. But we're talking about the creme de la creme of physical party places, indoor playgrounds, Discovery Zone. It's fun, believable fitness for kids. DZ, it's Discovery Zone where kids can be on their own, which isn't true because if you left them on their own, I'm pretty sure some fat balding guy that's been working a dead-end job who really likes to play with toys. You know what? I'm just going to stop right there. Let's see what else. Zoned in. Okay, so as I got older, I remember DZ, but then I also equated with like DMZ, demarcation zone, in North and South Korea, which technically you could say these were little work camps for kids. Anyways, let's keep going through them. Are you ready for the new DZ? It was probably around 1995 or 4 when they were getting ready to declare bankruptcy. Never the same fun twice. DZ, where kids wanna be. And with it only lasting 7 years, kids did not want to be there. So, in my head, I always thought that one of the reasons why this failed was due to the fact that it had a lot of tubes and ball pits that just literally had fecal matter all over them. I couldn't really get past that rumor, and I used to think that was the reason for its inevitable failure, but I was completely and utterly wrong. Many kids had their birthday parties here. It was kind of like a Chuck E. Cheese, but more activity-related things. There were some games, video games. They are completely gone. Now, of course, I had to do a little Wikipedia, and the company went into debt and eventually had to close and filed for bankruptcy protection. The chain lasted about 6 or 7 years. Now, doing my research, I kind of looked in to see if there were any type of takeovers or anything that was kind of funky with bust-out ploy that has been used before with Toys R Us, Blockbuster, KB Toys. This wasn't the case. This was literally just a failure on management and corporate's behalf. Now, let's get back and start from the very beginning as to when Discovery Zone was created. And it only lasted 6 to 7 years per Wikipedia. It was founded in 1989. Discovery Zone grew quickly, opening 15 stores in 18 months. And in April 1993, Discovery Zone was an American chain of entertainment facilities featuring games and elaborate indoor mazes designed for young children, including roller slides, climbing play structures, and ball pits. It also featured arcade games, which I didn't see a lot of them when I was going to this, which, mind you, I was 11 when I think the one by us closed and ended up becoming a Chuck E. Cheese. The climbing structures and ball pits were great, and like I said, and in other episodes, I always thought that the failure was due to just shit all over the place. Just everything covered in shit for Discovery Zone. A talking robot named Z-Bop served as the mascot to the chain. Ronald Match, Jim Jorgensen, and David Schoenstatt founded Discovery Zone in 1989, with the first location opening in Kansas City, Missouri in October 1989. An early investor and vocal supporter of the company, oh my gosh, was tennis player Billie Jean King. And not to downplay it, but she played against that one asshole guy. The big match was the Battle of the Sexes against the 55-year-old Bobby Riggs, and King beat the out of him, more or less. Anyways, that's Billie Jean King, but we're talking Discovery Zone. Now, looking this up, there's plenty of videos on YouTube in regards to Discovery Zone, the rise and fall. The beginning was based off of an innocent idea to get kids out there to play more. People saw the fattening of our children back in those days and equated it to them being lazy and Nintendos and N64s that were coming out. But in reality, it was the food that was killing you. Processed food, chippies, Dunkaroos, a fruit by the foot, Gushers. I'm just trying to make as many food sexual innuendos as I can for the listeners who enjoy this while sitting on a cake. Anywho, Discovery Zone was founded in 1989. It opened the 15 stores in 18 months. In April of 1993, Blockbuster Video invested $10.3 million into Discovery Zone to purchase 21% of the company. In June 1993, Discovery Zone raised $55 million more when it became public on the NASDAQ. So the stock had rose 61% in the first day of trading. It started off, initial buy-in was $25 a share. It ended at $35 a share at the end of the trading day. Discovery Zone completed a successful IPO in June 1993, led by Chris Bellios, Sam Jeremico, and Stephen No, raising over $50 million. In 1994, Discovery Zone merged its operations with Blockbuster and now former parent Viacom. So when I thought about this too, in regards to Blockbuster buying up, now at the time, it was a fantastic idea. The financials were not there. And I believe in 1994, Blockbuster had repurchased more shares at a lower cost. And in regards, it just ended up becoming a failure. But before we get to that, let's discuss how, in a sense, it did become a failure. It wasn't due to poor financials at first. It was a very successful store. The 15 locations that had opened up in 18 months were doing relatively well. And then from there, it went 36 to, in 1992, 61. And then from there, just kind of ballooned. They wanted to pretty much just take the whole market, monopolize on it because no one else was doing it. But there was someone else in the wings that saw what was going on. McDonald's. And I did not know this. McDonald's was the creator of Leaps and Bounds. Leaps and Bounds was kind of the competitor to Discovery Zone. Mind you, it didn't have the franchising aspect as Discovery Zone did. Discovery Zone continued to open more and more stores, and with this massive expansion, you should have the background or the foundation for a good corporation structure when it comes to franchising different places out, like Burger King or McDonald's or Blockbusters, which also did franchising. It was this massive expansion, but like so many, when you expand and continue to expand and all this growth is going on, but you don't have the foundation or the corporate foundation to back you up, failure begins. Within the first, I think 1992, there were about 50 franchises that had opened up, or I think it was like 50% up from the year before. So more and more were getting created. Within that next year, it shot down to 10% because the costs to keep this business open were insane. Cleanup, food prices, also some of the cross-market advertising that Discovery Zone was doing, that in turn costed money. So they wanted to hone the market. Leaps and Bounds was created, but ended up failing. A Discovery Zone bought 45 Leaps and Bounds stores from McDonald's for $111 million in stock, 57 franchise stores from Blockbuster Video for $91 million in stock, bringing the total stores to almost 300. At the same time, Blockbuster bought more shares of Discovery Zone, as I mentioned, giving it 50% of the stock. So Blockbuster held 50% of the stock. This is another bad idea by the owners and operators of Blockbuster Video. Blockbuster Video, then a subsidiary of Viacom, took total management control of Discovery Zone in April 1995. Viacom had plans to cross-market Discovery Zone with its other businesses such as Nickelodeon, Paramount Pictures, and Showtime. By the time Viacom took control of Discovery Zone, the company signed a deal with Saban Entertainment to include characters in the Mighty Morphin Power Ranger television series at play centers. And at the same time, the Power Rangers movie had just come out and shit was going bonkers. At the same time, may have looked like one of the best years. 1995 was one of the greatest years. Literally a year later, they declare bankruptcy.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
Hey babies, you liking the show? Well, thanks. Leave a 5-star rating and a comment, please. Do you want to see the guys' faces? Well, they got YouTube videos. You can watch this podcast on any major platform you listen to. Rate 5 stars and comment. Thanks, babies.
Discovery Zone had also planned a new family entertainment center to compete against Dave & Buster's, which was dubbed the Metro Zone. The new complexes would have included dining, drinking, mini golf, and VR games in addition to indoor playground equipment that Discovery Zone is known for. You know what? If they had something like that, how long would it take for people to just be having sex in those tubes? Especially when you have alcohol with that. Alcohol, video games, hey, Shirley, let's go on a date to Metro Zone, and then, I can feel you up in the ball pit. So, stretched thin by expansion, this massive expansion, like I said, they wanted to monopolize the whole market, which they did, in a sense, but they didn't do it in a very good way. Changes in management tried to save the company. However, Discovery Zone filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection on March 26, 1996, in Williamton, Delaware, with debts of up to $366.8 million. So they were declaring bankruptcy within that time frame, within 1996 to April 1999. There was a point where they were getting themselves out of debt. They had closed multiple locations, solely focusing on a few, and then it got away from them again. In 1999, Discovery Zone re-entered bankruptcy. This time, the abrupt closure of half of their locations on June 30th. That same year, being unable to alert those with reserved parties, 13 locations were sold to CEC Entertainment, owner of Chuck E. Cheese, who attempted to accommodate last-minute party reschedulings over the following days. And everywhere I read about this, it's like something that is mentioned over and over again, that Chuck E. Cheese tried to take these over. It's like, who gives a And I will get into this as to why Chuck E. Cheese was successful in regards to their expansion, and Discovery Zone just failed as a company. In June 2000, Discovery Zone's bankruptcy court judge ruled that there was no feasible way for the brand to be profitable, and their bankruptcy was converted into liquidation. By the end of 2001, the remaining 2005 locations in 39 states, Canada, and Puerto Rico shut down, and Discovery Zone was completely out of business. So why did Chuck E. Cheese last and they didn't? What Chuck E. Cheese was able to do was create this almost casino-like atmosphere. They had some play places. At least I know this Chuck E. Cheese that was near us had some of the stuff Discovery Zone had left over. So the one that was by us near a mall called Lakeside Mall was once a Leaps and Bounds. And that's when I had gone there. Supposedly that the upkeep was just too much. One of the reasons why McDonald's had dropped out, they had seen the writing on the wall that the profit wasn't there. You would have these massive weekends where it would just be overrun with kids and families during the weekdays. Nothing other than me, my dad, and my brothers, because we're a family of divorce, and that's where divorced parents take their kids when they don't want to deal with them, and they can just run around and play and be all ADHD, and then they eat pizza, and then they go home back to mom. Anywho, that was one of the reasons why it was a failure in general. And also the massive expansion. They thought, with pride and hubris, they thought that this idea was the end-all be-all. And then we'll put these metros out and it'll just be fun adult entertainment. When in reality, you probably have like two dudes in there getting lap dances by their girlfriends and then someone getting a Hummer in the ball pit. Anyways, McDonald's had seen what was going on. When it came to profits, there weren't much. You could have smaller play places, less upkeep, and make a profit, which McDonald's was already doing. They had the play places there. Yes, they were made out of steel. Yes, you could get tetanus on the slides or the Mayor McCheese jail, which was usually his head, and you're stuck in there. Discovery Zone tried to introduce video games and whatnot, but as you saw with a lot of these places, the expansion, the issues with corporate, not being able to get their food from them, a lot of these places ended up buying from local pizza places or local bakeries, or they tried to go with chains, Domino's or Baskin Robbins, to do some of their cakes and ice creams and pizzas, but to no avail. Nowadays, you still have places like these popping up, not Discovery Zones, but it's like one-offs. It's one company, or it's a company that owns maybe 2 or 3. The way that this place expanded with no structure was the reason for its downfall. There wasn't anything else other than that. There was no trickery aside. There wasn't people, competition planning little dumps in ball pits on the slides. It was literally management. The franchisees saw what was going on. They sold. For the most part, there was no expansion after that, and they tried to do whatever they could to get out. Viacom ended up selling at a loss and recouping, or trying to recoup as much as they could later on when they filed taxes as shit as a write-off. Now, memories that I had at Discovery Zone, I wasn't a Discovery Zone guy. I was a Leaps and Bounds guy. I liked their pizza. We would go in there and play for hours and hours, and a lot of the time, it was constantly there for birthday parties. But when I was in 8th grade, the rumor had gone around that a lot of those places closed due to salmonella poisoning, which was true. A lot of these places, kids and workers would get sick. And I think that is another reason why McDonald's sold a lot of that stuff. Another reason for the failure of Discovery Zone was because of how stretched thin everyone was. Attention to detail, customer service lacked. Just a lot of things in turn kind of fell apart because the legs for the torso weren't there. So, did the company not make enough money? It seems like once the initial cost of structures and games were covered, back then, a franchise, I believe, was $700,000, and that was 1.5 in today's money with inflation, which goes to show you how much more things are expensive, and the wages have not increased. Thank you, government. It seems once like the initial cost of structures and games were covered, it would be highly profitable. You only have to have a minimal staff to run the place and keep it clean. Then you just charge people by the hour to come in and play. How did it not work? Like I said, maybe some poor financial decisions were made, led to its initial downfall. It also mentions on the Wikipedia page, many of them were taken over by Chuck E. Cheese. Yeah, like I said, there's not a lot of articles you can find on this. You can find videos online, but I'm surprised that no one has tried to reboot the idea, but they have. So in this article, which was from a couple years ago, even then there was like places like Jungle Java that's around us. There's 2 locations where kids can go and play. It's a lot easier to clean. There are no ball pits. You had to disinfect ball pits. You had to disinfect the tunnels. You had to do all this stuff. How do I know? Because I saw people doing it, working there and cleaning it. And you have these Chuck E. Cheeses and these, like I said, Jungle Javas and whatnot. They don't even come close to Leaps and Bounds. They don't even come close to Discovery Zone. Chuck E. Cheese is more or less a casino for kids. No play places, so less to clean. Anytime we've gone there, there's been only maybe 1 to 2 people working. So less people working means more profits. You get a bunch of kids in there, parents that are just looking to have their kids do something at the moment instead of actually taking the time to go and maybe go for a walk, go for a nature hike, go fishing. And you know what? I do this though too. I take my kids to Chuck E. Cheese. They love Chuck E. Cheese. I don't understand it. I still think that, and allegedly, this is allegedly, that they repurpose pizzas. Because how the can you not stretch a pizza out the correct size and you have one piece of crust that's 3 inches above the other piece? It's repurposing, allegedly. I have to say allegedly.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
Hey guys, you can catch this podcast on any major platform you listen to podcasts. Please make sure to rate us 5 stars and comment on how you're liking the show. After School Special Podcast.
You know, that hard goodness that you get the next day.
Oh, yummy.
From a day-old donut at Dougie's.
After School Special Podcast.
No. That's my childhood right there, motherfucker. When did that come out?
Podcast comes out every Friday. So, Discovery Zone, something that is viable to date. Could Discovery Zone make a comeback? Well, as far as I know, it has. It looks like in 2020, a new center using Discovery Zone name opened in Cincinnati suburb of Union Township. It is not affiliated with the original company, but is heavily inspired by it. A second location was added in Florence, Kentucky at the Florence Mall, and I believe the Ohio one is, I want to say, East Point Mall? Jeepers was another one that had opened up, had multiple locations and whatnot. This is a viable company. I think it has more to do with the ridiculous expansion that it decided to make without the actual feet to stand on. Similar places that have done this, you have Subways, you have Quiznos, which basically is out of business. Subway, I think, could be heading in that direction. They have been able to stay alive even after all the controversy that happened with the bread and meat and the tuna, and let's not forget the pedophile. But for some reason, they're still able to stand. Even though I am seeing more and more locations close. In turn, I'm not seeing any Chuck E. Cheese locations close. I'm pretty surprised by that. But for the most part, it's a brand. You're buying into a brand. It was the same thing with Discovery's, technically a brand. We're all buying into brands. When we eat at McDonald's, what are we eating? We're eating a brand. Same thing with Burger King, Pizza Hut, or any of these other places. You can go small, but at the same time, it's hard for me to do that when some of these corporations are paying their employees what they should be getting. Like, I believe White Castle is paying their people $17 an hour. Now there's talks of actually getting health care, where in turn these small businesses, I am not attacking small businesses. I have no problem with small businesses as long as you pay your people a livable wage. Now, mind you, if you want to hire teenagers or people that are living at home, sure. But if you want people that are more mature, that understand business acumen, that comes at a cost. And if you're not willing to pay that cost, you shouldn't be in business. That's any place. That is simple capitalism. And if you want to bitch and moan at the fact that you're not able to make ends meet, because there's at least places around here, small businesses that I do not shop at, mainly due to the fact of how they treat their employees. Corporations, there's plenty of places I won't shop at because of the way that they treat their employees. I won't go to Kroger's. They treat their employees like shit. I'll go to Aldi. Prices are cheaper than Myers or any of that stuff, or any other shopping center you go to. Aldi is pretty good, and they treat their employees pretty well and pay them pretty well. Small business or not, pay people what they deserve. And in turn, more businesses can open up because more people will have more money to spend. I don't know, is that trickle down? No, that's when the rich get tax breaks. We got all that money, right? Right, Reagans? Anywho, the founders, Ronald, Jim, and David, Dr. David Schoenstatt, and Jim Jorgensen and Ronald Metch, their original vision, I think, got away from them. No one really discusses how long they were in it for, unless maybe they were in it for the entire time. I can't find it anywhere else. They were independent from 1989 to 1995, and I think that's when they made their exit, when in turn, they kind of saw the writing on the wall. But originally why this was created, to just get kids active again. There was the whole health kick in the 90s with Arnold Schwarzenegger taking over and trying to get kids healthy.
I'm like getting the feeling of coming in the gym. I'm getting the feeling of coming at home. I'm getting the feeling of coming backstage when I pump up, when I pose out in front of 5,000 people. I get the same feeling. So I'm coming day and night. I mean, it's terrific, right?
Arnold Schwarzenegger taking over the health department or whatnot. I don't know. Him there with a bunch of kids. That was a Nickelodeon thing. I can't remember if that was George Bush. I think it was George Bush. I don't think it was Bill Clinton, because Arnold Schwartz, he's a Republican. I think the intentions were there with Discovery Zone. I think they legitimately wanted to get kids getting physical. Jesus Christ, getting physical with kids. Anywho, it was there. I think they were just naive when it came to the business and business practices. They wanted to expand and monopolize on this market that really there wasn't a market, or there wasn't, because there were plenty other places that had opened up that stayed around. It was just this giant that continued to expand, and with that, that's just how they failed. Continued expansion without any type of oversight. No one saying, hey, maybe we should stop. And a lot of that, I think, has to do with Blockbuster and Viacom. The way that their businesses were, they saw the explosion, but it's two different businesses. One deals with physical education for kids with Discovery Zone, and then the other one is a form of entertainment or movies where you're not being physically active at all. So it's a sad story, but it's not really bad of a story, I guess. Like, it's bound to happen, and it's bound to happen again, too. It's just poor business practices put in place because you think it works for one thing, it may not work for another. And all these other jungle gym places, indoor activity centers that are still around, were able to do it right. I think a lot of it, or at least what I've determined in the long run, it has to do more with human greed than it does with actually helping anyone. You're dealing with a product or a brand. That's it. It's cold, it's calculated. Like everything else when it comes to business, it is about making money. And when you can't make money, businesses close. So what do we have in the aftermath of Discovery Zone? Like I said, Chuck E. Cheese's, which are bottom of the barrel. The best thing that ever happened at a Chuck E. Cheese is when there's a big brawl that happens. And you get to see Grandma Loopy beat the shit out of Cousin Terry, and then Cousin Terry takes out a knife and shanks little Jimmy. I've actually seen one at the Chuck E. Cheese where I take my kids. And so this is going to be a short episode. I just wanted to kind of put something out there in the ether to get us going again. We are constantly trying to figure out what you guys want to hear, what you guys want to listen to. And I think what we're going to start doing is taking a deeper dive into some of the businesses that we love and care for and see kind of why they failed, see why they're still around. Not only that, movies, deep dives into films, how they were made, how they were pitched, music videos, things that have happened in our past. So in my head, and I'm not sure where the guys are with this, this is solely me. If I'm going to look in the past, I want to be informed about the past. I don't want to look at it and live in it. You know, time is a flat circle. History will repeat itself at some point. We will have another Discovery Zone, except it's going to be with Glip Glop and Shoopy-Doo, the aliens, and they're trying to probe you, and you got to run away from them, and it's a bunch of tunnels and ball pits, but the ball pits have spikes coming out of the balls and all this stuff. This is the shit that goes on in my head, constantly thinking of the most ridiculous crap. But I think what we're trying to lean towards more now, instead of just having discussions about memories, because you can only go so far with that, and I think we have reached the pinnacle or the precipice. We will still bring up our memories in regards to these businesses, but I think going more of a documentary style podcast and just try to build. So, in the comments, message us. Let us know what topics you guys want to hear. We want you to get the pleasure out of your ears, to get the little clits inside your ears, to get them rubbing and going. Anywho, in the next coming weeks, tell us in regards to how you think the new format is. Now, mind you, the guys are going to be back on here. I don't know how much John is. Now, John was able to get on here once. He will be doing his own deep dives as well. We'll try to get him on here when we can. But a lot of this stuff is going to be related to discussions in regards to these businesses and the creation of either failure or uprise as to how these have gone and the memories that we have of them. Let us know what you guys think. Like I said in the comments, message us topics, leave us a voicemail. The voicemail system, if you click the link in our Instagram and scroll all the way down, you can leave us a voice message. We did get a nice message on TikTok. Now, mind you, Don did erase it, but I'm going to say it. An older gentleman calling us turds. It was the nicest thing anyone could have ever done. The nicest thing I could have seen on Christmas Day. Aww. And then I actually started looking at some of the videos he had on there. This is a deeply troubled man. And all I'm going to say is, right back at you, bud. Say hi to whatever pillow you decided to f that day, or whatever type of big-ass fruit you decided to put your in, you psychopath. Anyways, I'm not angry in regards to any of this, and I know Don erased the comment that he left, but in the future, we're just going to leave those comments. I'm going to get on a tangent here, and I'm not going to do that. I just wanted to say how much I appreciate you 30 listeners that we have. And crazy enough, you guys have listened to almost every single one of our episodes. And I praise you for that. Thank you for coming along on this journey as we continue to develop what we do best, which is nostalgia, which is documenting things that we loved in our past, memories of our childhood. This new year is going to be great. All right, have a great night, guys. Bye! Hey everyone, it's Aaron from After School Special Podcast. Like what you hear so far? But don't forget to subscribe and download the show on whatever platform you get your podcasts. And just a friendly reminder, we have new episodes out every Friday. Thanks for listening, everyone. Getting physical... Jesus Christ, getting physical with... God damn it. Anywho...